This week in Louisiana Agriculture.
I'm Danna Miller in rural Brazil. You think you face hurdles getting a crop in Louisiana? Well, just get a load of what they have to deal with here in Brazil. That story coming up.
How does the LSU Ag Center help keep Louisiana competitive on a global basis against countries like Brazil? I'm Avery Davidson with that story ahead.
Hello everyone, I'm Michael Danna. Thanks so much for joining us on this special edition of This Week in Louisiana Agriculture. Our program today is coming to you from Panama City, home of the Panama Canal, as a trade delegation of U.S. farmers wrapped up a 2-week tour of Brazil, Colombia, and Panama. This Week in Louisiana Agriculture traveled with members of the American Farm Bureau on its Farmer to Farmer tour, a trade mission designed to drive home the message that the U.S. needs to solidify its trading relationships here in South America and to ratify free trade agreements with Colombia and Panama. Nowhere else in South America is the need for a free trade agreement more evident than in Colombia. Over the last 2 years, the U.S. has been losing its foothold, particularly when it comes to exports of grain, a problem farmers on this tour say needs to be corrected immediately. We begin with this week's program by looking at how U.S. grain exports to Colombia are slowly being squeezed out by foreign competitors.
This U.S. ship unloading corn here at the port of Cartagena in northern Colombia could be replaced by vessels from Argentina. In fact, Argentina is one of a handful of countries making inroads into Colombian grain imports, all at the expense of American grain farmers. Farmers on this trade mission said Colombia is a key market for U.S. farm products. Without a free trade agreement, the U.S. stands to lose the balance of its ag trade to countries like Argentina, Brazil, and Canada.
So that's generating a lot of demand from Colombia's agricultural sector.
At a meeting with members of the U.S. Foreign Ag Service, farmers were told that Colombia represents the second largest South American market for U.S. farm products. But the U.S. has been losing ground. In 2008, U.S. farmers shipped $1.7 billion in farm products to Colombia, but in 2009, that number had dropped to $800 million.
If we don't do something quickly, we're going to keep losing a lot of our agricultural market share.
Part of the reason is that Colombia has one of the highest tariff structures of any country in South America. A free trade agreement would make U.S. farm products more competitive and would do away with Colombia's 30% tariff on U.S. farm products.
If we have an FTA, all those tariffs, most of them will go to zero immediately.
But a free trade agreement isn't the only hurdle U.S. and Colombian farmers face as they attempt to improve their positions in the world market. Drugs and the growing of coca for cocaine is still a major hurdle. But one U.S. official said security in Colombia is improving.
5-10 years ago, you couldn't, as Mark said, there were kidnappings going on all over the place. You couldn't drive over the hill for fear of being kidnapped. Now people drive all over the country. So the security situation has made Colombia very attractive for foreign investment. About 3/4 of the foreign investment goes into oil, gas, and coal.
This is the perfect storm of how to avoid making business, because we are losing business very fast, both countries, in agricultural field. So we have to correct that, and it can be done in a very simple way, is to have the U.S. Congress to take this FTA and approve it as soon as possible.
With a free trade agreement in place, more than 80% of current U.S. farm exports to Colombia would become duty-free immediately. That, says Illinois Farm Bureau President Philip Nelson, makes Colombia a must-have export market.
Since we've been here firsthand, we've witnessed the loss of $1 billion of export markets just in the last year and a half. And if that continues, this doesn't bode well for American agriculture and what we export.
Now, Colombia does have a free trade agreement with Canada, which is due to come online later this summer. When that agreement does become effective, the Canadians could be shipping more than $200 million a year in wheat to Colombia. Well, as we said earlier, we are in Panama City, and it is the home of the Panama Canal. This is the Bridge of the Americas. Construction was completed in 1962 and serves as the gateway to the Panama Canal for ships entering from the Pacific Ocean. More than 14,000 ships a year pass through the Panama Canal, many of those ships carrying grain from the United States and other U.S. farm exports that are bound for South America.